Hey guys, I'm Matesight, and this is another Raid Shadow Legends video. So today we're going to talk about the new permanent fusion. It's one of the biggest things that's happened in the game since I've been playing. So we're going to go over, we're going to talk about Lady Mikage, the mythical champ at the end of the fusion, near the end of the video. But we're going to focus on how these Legos here and these epics, how much worth you can get out of them if you're if you're like a mid-game account. So we'll talk about these rares at the bottom. These guys right here, these four, you probably get them pretty easy. I wouldn't worry about it. None of them are super crazy. Just do what's right for your account, but you should be able to easily get rid of those for this epic without a problem. Uh, these guys will be a little harder to get because they're voids, but otherwise, same kind of deal. None of them seem really overpowered or crazy to me. Uh, shouldn't have an issue. Now we'll get into the epics. They're a little more interesting. So first off, if you're a mid-game account, most of these epics are going to be faction wars mainly, but that's not bad either, because in the mid-game, especially early in the mid-game, you're going to be fighting for good champions for faction wars, so you can get that done and get Lydia, right? So these guys, you're going to have to level them up to 5-star, level 50 anyway for the fusion. And it's going to take quite a while for most of us to get this, because the only way to get these guys right here on the bottom left is pull. And eventually, hopefully, get lucky. So you got a lot of time that you're going to be holding on to some of these champs. Might as well get some value out of them. And the best place for most of these epics, in my opinion, is Faction Wars. You're already going to be leveling them up. You're already going to be ascending them. Let them do some work in Faction Wars. So we'll talk about these guys first. We'll just take a quick look at them. We're not going to go over their kits. Definitely do what's best for your account. Look at the kits. Maybe they have something. But generally, these two, this guy and Lockwayne here, neither of them are just super interesting in my opinion. Out of the two, he has the most interesting. We will look at one skill real quick. This attack on enemies has 25% chance of removing Veil or Perfect Veils from all enemies. And you can book that up to a 50% chance. I've not seen anybody use that crazily, but there may be situations where that might be useful to you. But with their ratings on places like hellhades.com and stuff like that, they're both just good faction war champs. I would use them in faction wars, and I would definitely, just hold on to them as far as that goes. So that's the right side. I'd take these rares here, throw them over into your vault, level them up on a champ training or whenever, keep them in your vault, keep them ready. No big deal. These guys, throw them in faction wars, get some value. That's about it. So these, in my opinion, epics right here are much more interesting. As you can see, I've got two copies of her right now, of Indalia, if I'm pronouncing that name right. They're still mostly faction war champs, and Indalia, in my opinion, is one of the better ones because she's really good in faction wars. She also has some usability in Hydra. So if you are mid game and you're struggling to get a good Hydra team going, obviously there's way better champs. But if you're on like trying to figure out your second and third Hydra team, you can get some use out of her, some value in faction wars and in Hydra. So she's one. These other two down here at the bottom. So when we're talking about Lady Quillen and this guy here, Moonblade, they're just basic faction wars. Unless you have better faction war champs for those factions, that's Sylvan Watchers on Moonblade, and I believe she is Bannerlords. Put them in there. You got to level them to 50 anyway. Get some value. Fire Gun's another interesting one though because you can use her in the Dwarfs faction wars. Obviously, we're going to say faction wars a lot because that's where a lot of these guys are going to get your value because they're just not super great epics. But she, if you don't have a good Bommel team or have someone like Lady Annabella, which is another epic that can solo Bommel, she's can be built. Now, from my understanding, the gear requirement's pretty high, but you can build her to solo Bommel because he takes more damages from bombs, and she's a bomb champ. So, if you're struggling with Bommel and you think you have the gear, look up that team setup and see if you can go and get some value out of her there. Otherwise, more faction wars. These two on the bottom, Ashma and Ulfrig, they're just faction war champs. Ulfrig's really good with the support in faction wars, but you know, do what's right for your account. Look at them. If you need somebody with their kits in faction wars, throw them. If not, throw them to the side in a vault. Definitely check all their kits out though, because you might find that one of them has an ability you really need. And that's going to be the main thing with all these epics guys, is making sure that you get the most value you can on your account, because you're going to be holding them for a while, right? I can't pronounce this lizard's name, but just another basic faction war champs. This lady, Ilizenia, for me, these three are the most interesting, because you can use Indalia on Hydra, you can use Fire Gun on Bommel, and Ilizenia you can probably use in Hydra as well. So they may be good champs. You're already going to 50 them. You're going to 5-star ascend them. You might use them in your second or third Hydra team just to fill in a spot you don't have yet until you can get the better champs. So that's it for the epics. Not a lot of value there, but definitely will help you push while you're mid-game and you're working on this, and it'll take you a while. You can get some value out of your faction wars. Maybe get them done before you get there. So let's talk about the Legos. We will look at these kits from the Legos. The Legos are definitely more interesting. We'll talk about what I consider, in my opinion, the worst of the two. Tatsu, I feel like you're going to get the least amount of value out of. But you grab her, you 6-tier, you 6-star, and then maybe she'll help you. She's probably going to only be useful, and most of your value will be, again, in faction wars. But we'll look at her kit. Attacks one enemy 2 times, transfers debuffs, fills champion's turn meter. Attacks all enemies on the A2, has a 75% chance, books to 100, placing a 50% decreased resist, and 2 on all enemies, and a sleep debuff. And it fills the champion's turn meter by 10. So she does a lot of her own turn refill. That's on a 4-turn. And this is a 5-turn cooldown. It attacks one enemy 2 times. A 4 attacker removes all debuffs from her and steals buffs from the target. Places a 50% increased attack buff and a 30% increased crit damage buff on the champion for 2 turns, if it kills an enemy, and these buffs cannot be removed. So it seems like there may be some niche uses for her A3, but overall, from what I've seen, like Hell Hades only has her as a 3 overall champ, but she has like a lot of damage in faction wars. So if you're struggling with Shadowkin faction wars, you throw her in there, get some value. She's the weaker, in my opinion, of the 2 legendaries. Now, this is a legendary that I like, the Caria the Watcher. Now, we'll go over her kit, and then I'll tell you what I think. Now, first, Falling Star Crush, level 1. Attack one enemy, 50% chance of placing a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. So it's only 50%, and you can only get that up to a 70%. So I'm not a big fan that you can only get up to a 70%, but it's still useful to decrease attack. Attacks all enemies on our A2, has a 75% chance of decreasing the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn. Also has a 75% chance of placing a 50% decreased accuracy buff for 2 turns. And it's based on defense. She's a defense-based chance. This is on a 4-turn cooldown. You can see how that would be useful in some certain wave content. Again, that's probably you're definitely gonna be able to get value out of this champ on faction wars. If you just need that extra, defense-based champion in your dwarf faction wars to help get it pushed, she'll do that. I like her A3 the best. Places a 50% ally protection. Again, that's going to help you in faction wars too. All allies except this champion for 2 turns. Also places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies. Now, just looking at her kit, and from other things I've seen, Hell Hades gives her a 4. And because she has a lot of value, besides just faction wars, in clan boss. So, if you don't have an unkillable team, and usually what people need for an unkillable team is at least 1 man-eater. Sometimes to make good unkillable teams, you need 2 man-eaters. And possibly Immic will help. But most unkillable teams need at least 1 man-eater unless you have a Demithia. But these are hard champs to get. Man-eaters and Demithias are not the easiest to pull. So if you're a mid-game player and you're going through this fusion here, and you've got these epics that are okay for faction wars, but not really useful anywhere else, unless you've got a specific niche in your account you're filling, it's a no-brainer to get rid of them, grab her, get her to 60, and then do some clan boss damage. Me personally, I have an unkillable team because I got very lucky with the man-eaters, and the Emic fusion, but I see her value. If I had her right now, I would put her in my faction war team to finish out my dwarf faction wars. I think I only like a couple stars and I'm done. I would say if you are a mid-game player and you don't have an unkillable team, she definitely will do a lot of value. Out of this row right here, these two epics and these two legendaries, she, in my opinion, is going to give you the best value on a mid-game account, period. So, definitely worth holding on to. And if you get lucky and you can grab her and you're waiting on these guys, use her. And then she's the one that if you had everything ready to go and you were going to fuse her, she's the only one that I would be questionable about whether you're ready to get rid of her or not. So you definitely want to watch that. If you get in this fusion and you're not running an unkillable clan boss team, you might want to keep her for a little bit longer. You don't want to mess up your clan boss. It's just too important for a mid-game player, clan boss is. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the big mythical champ, Lady Mikage. Maybe pronouncing that wrong. So, she's got the two forms, obviously. I'm not going to go real deep into her. Every content creator out there, all the big ones, are talking about her. HellHades.com gives her a 4. So, the same as Kreela. I think some people are claiming that if by the time you get her, you won't need her. And I really think that depends on your account. She is probably, just to give a quick summary, I think she is probably the best ally attack champion in the game. In my opinion, her base form is probably better than her other form. But if you look at her kit real close, she's probably the best ally attacker in the game. Cardial would be second. If you get to the point of having her and you don't have a cardial, you can find a lot of use out of her. Now, looking, like I said, at where she's most useful, she probably will be most useful to most players in Fire Not Hard because of the ally attack. Hell Hades says she'll be pretty good in Doom Tower, and Spider she's pretty good in. I don't have her yet. I haven't looked into her too deep. I've watched a lot of videos from other content creators about her. There's a lot of different stuff out there. Some people they don't like her. They don't think you'll need her. But for a mid-game player, I think if you're working on this fusion, especially if you get really lucky and get her early, she'll still be useful. If you are a free-to-play, low spender, and you're in the mid-game working on getting her, you will be able to find a use for her. You're not, unless you're very lucky, you're not going to have all the champions and all that stuff, all the niches she could fill, you're not going to have all those. So she'll fill one of them for you. Now, there are people that get very lucky and that's not the case. So, base form, we've got attack one enemy with one random ally from the Shadowkin faction. This is nice. You can really make some work with this. It is restrictive to the Shadowkin faction, but I know a lot of good Shadowkin. There's people talking about her being good in Clan Boss. Jintaro is a Shadowkin that's very good in Clan Boss. And giving him some extra attacks, because he's already going to be built for damage, might be useful. There's other Shadowkin faction guys that will be very useful too, that she can work with in like Fire Knight and stuff. So, places a shield. Attacks all enemies, decreases the duration of buffs, and then increases the duration of all enemy debuffs. So that's the one, I think that's really just good for wave content. That's the one that might be very powerful in Doom Tower, depending on the waves you're on. And here she places increased attack buff and 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns. Then teams up with all allies to attack a single enemy. The allies joining the attack will use their default skill. That, to me, is probably the best ability she has. Now, that's just my opinion. And other people might think other ones are. But this, from what I've seen, everybody is pretty much in a consensus that her base form is stronger, and because of this ability, the being able to increase attack, increase crit damage, and then everybody attacks 1. That's why a lot of people are saying she'll be decent for Fire Not Hard. You can knock that shield out real quick. Decent for Spider, just to get some damage on. So, that's the basic summary of this fusion. I honestly feel like this is a very good thing they've done. It's one of the biggest things they've done since I've been playing this game. I'd say it's the biggest thing they've done since I've been playing. I'm very excited about it. I would like to have her, even if she doesn't feel a super powerful niche in my account. She's fun, and it's the only mythical champion a low spender to free to play mid game account has a real good chance of getting right now. I mean, unless you're super lucky. So, I mean, definitely think it's good to do. I think this is definitely something you should keep out for. You should grab these rares and epics as you go. Yeah, it sucks. The only way to grab these guys is pull shards, but as you get them, give value in Faction Wars, put them to the side, get these guys, grab her, have a good time. That's it for me, guys. You know, if you agree that you think she's useful for mid game, please, leave a comment. If you like the video and like the discussion of these champs and how valuable they'd be in the early and mid game, hit the like button for me. That helps out a lot. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.